You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Justin Long. Justin is an American record producer, mixing engineer, and writer based in Los Angeles. He currently works as a freelance producer and is also the house engineer at Barefoot Recording in Hollywood, California. In 2013, Justin reached out to famed record producer Eric Valentine and moved to Los Angeles and began an apprenticeship with him. During his time working with Eric, Justin worked on records for Keith Urban, 5 Seconds of Summer, Nickel Creek, Hey Violet, and many more. Since 2018, Justin has engineered records for The Wombats, Sleater Kinney, and Joshua Spears, engineered and mixed for Fits and the Tantrums, and many, many more. Former guest Daniel Silberman recommended I reach out to Justin, so it's a pleasure to have him on the show. Welcome to Secret Sonics, Justin.
Thanks, Ben. It is a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. It's a pleasure to have you on. Tell us a bit about your story. How did you get started in production?
Yeah, so got into production. It was pretty stereotypical, I think, overall. I played in a lot of bands in my teenage years, and we would end up recording music because that's what there is to do. So you end up doing that and doing that more and more. And then also you do it where then you actually have recordings to actually for people to hear. It's kind of sick. And then when I would do this with bands also, you'd go to even at the thing, I remember in MySpace days and things like that, bands would find engineers that we go to record for $200 a song or something like that and go do it. And we'd have processes and things like that and to, record music. And at the end of it, I would always be the one when we get into mix notes where everybody would be like, yeah, that sounds all right. And I'd be like, guys, this is going to be this way forever. We can't actually change. Are we sure we're all good with this? Let's just make sure this is dope. And so just naturally, when I was in bands, because I was the one that cared the most about what the recordings were like, I just naturally gravitated into recording more music.
Wow. Was there what were you listening to at that stage in your life that was making you so aware of what went into a good production or a good mix?
I don't think I had any awareness, really. I'll answer the second part of the question before the first question. And to be honest, as a kid, so I grew up in, I guess another stereotypical thing, maybe for musicians in at least the United States or whatever, is grew up, took piano lessons, was able to do that, and that was dope. Family didn't have that much money overall, but neither of my parents got to play. My dad was one of 11 kids, and the older kids got to take piano lessons, and the younger kids did, but he was in the middle. And so when there's 11, and so he didn't get to take piano lessons.
Malcolm in the middle in literal real life.
And literally and things like that. And so it was really important, even on limited means, for all of me and my siblings to have piano lessons. I realized I could tell you way too much information about everything. But anyway, so that's why I had piano lessons, and it's crazy to think about, how much my brain, even though I'm not good at piano, I have to say that, one, because I'm not that good overall, but also the people I work with on any given day who are just 1,000,000,000% better than me at one instrument or another, And we all learn how...
When you're tracking at Barefoot,
Oh,
I can imagine that the level of the musicians there are.
Every day, and it's I'm really good at what I do, but I also started as a musician, and I still play and can record and do things and whatever else. But it's very good for keeping your ego in check, where you'll sit next to someone regularly who it's this person isn't 10% better than me. They're 1,000,000,000% better than me. It keeps you honest,
Yeah, I definitely hear that.
Yeah. But to get to the... so I got to take piano lessons, and then would end up singing in church and playing music in church growing up. So the corollary, the side note of that thing is I was not exposed to a lot of music growing up because I grew up religious conservative, and more rules than exist for a lot of society, I guess you would say.
Sure. I could hear that coming from the Orthodox Jewish perspective.
Yeah.
Even though we grew up listening to everything, but there are definitely people that are a bit more to the right of where I was growing up.
Well, there's certain aspects, and I feel there's
similar.
certain cultures that have different levels of cultivation and how much care and order are just like part of the culture or whatever else. And so one of those things was that I didn't know this when I was a child, but as I've gotten older and working with lots of musicians, the amount of music that and I know shit tons of I don't know if I should be swearing on this, but I know tons of music.
You could swear as much as you want. Yeah.
Okay. That will make me more. I don't need to do it, but knowing that I can makes me comfortable. At this point, the amount of people I worked with and whatever else, it's also a great thing about working in music is if you like it, you work with all these other people that ideally love it as much as you do. And it's like you get to tap into all these other people that have built their own catalog of what music is dope over the years. And so when you find someone that you can always just find new music from anybody. And you'll have these weird little connections where it's like, oh, you know what, this person, like, I just get along with this person or whatever else or things like that. And you find, I don't know, it's kind of like an unending musical journey that half the time I don't even want to know about. But then something amazing comes across and I'm like, damn, I'm glad people do this. You know, I'm glad someone made this so that I can enjoy it.
Yeah. How old were you when you started being more familiar with all these different kinds of musics, like different genres?
One of the things, and so that was like early childhood, and I think I don't know what the normal is for everyone else. That was just my childhood. There were certain things where, like, when I'd go and stay with my grandma introduced me to Led Zeppelin. She's this crazy, dope old woman. She was the first female newspaper distributor for the Washington Post. So she's a single mom, had 4 kids, crazy woman, just worked nights. I should say crazy hard work ethic. Did not tolerate. Okay, now I'm just talking about my grandma. But anyway, so she was dope. She introduced me to Led Zeppelin, and like we would listen. If I'd go stay with her, sometimes we'd go and deliver papers, and the radio would be on all night. And so if she wasn't listening to, it's like Art Bell or something, this crazy old radio show that comes on like the wee hours of the morning. So either that would be on, they talk about weird freak thing. I don't even know what. It's just crazy people. Whoever calls into radio shows at like 3 a.m. That's what that show is.
UFO sighter people.
Some crazy, and I don't even know, because when you're 8, you don't even know what type of people are weird yet. You're just like, okay, this is apparently what's going on.
This is a thing.
But yeah, and then like listening to music, just like delivering papers at like in the dark or whatever. And so there were a lot of dope experiences where like, so her favorite song was that Phil Collins song. Was it called In the Air Tonight or I Can Feel It?
Yeah.
Whatever
In the Air Tonight.
In the Air Tonight.
Yeah. Gated drums.
Her favorite thing was when the drums came in. Her favorite. Yeah. And my grandma is like old at this point. She's like in her 60s, whatever else, delivering papers and whatever with me. And like the fact that she loved like that, and she would just crank up the stereo in her minivan or whatever. And it was like, hell yeah. Like music is sick. I don't know, like on a fundamental level, you learn these things. So she was actually exposed me to a lot of different music where I'm like, oh, this is what's going on. I also didn't have we didn't have cable growing up, so I didn't have MTV or anything like that to even gauge like what musical culture was. So that was the big thing that kind of changed. So here's the thing is, I just found out early on, I don't think I knew how to think critically about music or anything like that. I just loved music. I loved songs. And when I was like, okay, whatever this does is dope. And I just know that I like this. It's kind of like, that thing, I don't know if we'd already started talking about this yet, but like the idea of like, I was saying when a person comes in and out of my movie, does my face go up or down? Like I pay attention to these things. When all I just knew is when songs would be playing, whatever it did to me, in whatever my movie frame was going on, like this is a thumbs up dope experience. And so it's just like you file away enough mental cues on that and you're like, okay, I like this shit. The other side of it, I think of where I started caring about audio things is my dad's an editor and my mom is a business manager. And so I think genetically and the way I was raised, editors look for imperfections and ways to make things as best as they can be. And so there's a certain, you could say, obsessiveness, OCD-ness always chasing to, if music is so dope and I like it so much, then I can channel this into how do I do that?
And how do you make it as good as possible?
How do you do that? Yeah. And it's funny that I've changed my brain on that, like, I don't know, 5 times over the 15 years I've been doing this of what is the best way to do it.
Right. I'm sure we're always evolving.
Right.
So tell me a bit about how you reached out to Eric Valentine, like, because that's like a ballsy move, right? This guy is, like the mad scientist of the. I kind of described it to Tim O'Sullivan, who's already been on the show and also works at Barefoot, as like this mad scientist, music producer that has all these crazy ideas of like how to move a microphone and a drumbrella. Like, how'd you find out about him? How'd you reach out to him? Did you have a connection?
Yeah. So the way Eric came onto my map as a producer, or into my movie, so to speak. So the local band, like Heroes or whatever, the band that could actually make it, that was doing something outside the DC area, was Good Charlotte. So they were a local hardworking band that was doing stuff. They got stuff onto DC 101, the radio station, when people listen to radio station. Maybe they still do, I don't know. But they like got stuff even, I don't know if they were fully independent or if they were signed or whatever else, but they got stuff onto the radio, which was dope. And it's like you could go see them at shows. And so that was kind of like looked up, it's like, okay, these dudes are older than me and doing it. And then also, you don't want to like them too much because they're kind of like the next competition up. Like you're
right.
stoked that they're doing, but also be like, yeah, I can't think this is cool because fuck these guys,
Yeah.
And it would have been anyone because it's like it's like look at the ninth graders looking up to the seniors, it's like you got to have a little chip on your shoulder. Anyway, so what was cool about that is, heard their records of and what they were doing. It's like very aware and frankly, like, yeah, that was a crazy thing is that those dudes, everyone just knew they hustled like crazy. It was just very aware. Anyway, and then they did a record with Eric that sounded incredible to me when I was probably like 16 or 17. What he managed to do on that album, the biggest thing was I just had an A reference of what they did with someone else, and then I heard what they did with Eric, and like it started with like this Danny Elfman crazy intro, whatever type of thing. And I'm like, they just made something that you just have this little musical journey when you're like 16 years old. And it's like, I didn't even know you could do that with records. Cause I didn't grow up with Pink Floyd or any of these like concept albums, which this actually shows how far developed I was as a child in terms of listening to music, where I would that would be close for me thinking like, oh damn, this is like crazy. What's going on? Because there's a Danny Elfman intro. Also, it's dope as fuck. And like still to this day, it's like, I love that Eric was able to fashion this whole aesthetic around these hardworking dudes that like wrote these songs.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Like, and I just saw there was never a better like contrast of like A and B is because I'd seen it. And it was local. And then I saw what this dude did. And so then I was like, okay, and that was I'm sure there were other times I looked at the back of CDs or whatever. I was kind of like, who did this? Like, who did this? Because I know what it was like. And so that's how I found out about Eric Valentine. Later, I had ended up, this was probably like when Gear Sluts was first coming. Actually, I don't know when it first started, but like probably like 2008 to 2010. I think Eric did when you log into their stuff or whatever, I assume the site still exists. When you log in, there's like producers will have, if you remember, their producers have interviews or like forums where they'll answer questions. And there's lots of super dope ones that I would just read through because it's like, these are all brilliant engineers who have done lots of crazy stuff. They have lots of stories and like are actually just taking the time, not just to like say what's up, but like also answer questions from people. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Eric's was super sick and I saw that one and I was like, this dude is so thoughtful with every answer. The level of detail and care into every answer that existed, whatever else. It was literally, up to that point, I think it was the best one on there. And that was just another thing where I'm like, okay, this is the dude and the personality and brain that did this Good Charlotte stuff. Also, once you're aware of that, then you can also scan back and be like, oh, he also did the Queens of the Stone Age thing.
Right.
Which was like, okay, obviously, like, this is stupid, ridiculous. Like, when I first heard that on the radio, I was like, damn, what is going on here? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a crazy record. It's funny how he left that. I mean, maybe it's obvious that he left that kind of impression on you. Like I first learned about him, I think, on Pensado's Place, maybe in like 2012 or something. Mm-hmm. Like I'm talking like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy's a genius. He's so thoughtful. Like the way he like creates these like, his freaking consoles like absorb sound better than most consoles. Like he's so thoughtful about like these tiny details and the drumbrella and all this stuff. Like really made an impression on me. you
It's
know, I
ridiculous.
obviously didn't have the balls to reach out to him.
It's ridiculous. Well, then, and actually,
you know.
we'll get to that in a second. One other thing that's, just as an aside, is